Sam Harris is one of those, like, I'm a liberal because I believe in democracy and civility, and I want to preserve civilization from, like, Islamicism and shit. You know, he's very Islamophobic. He did resuscitate a lot of the race and IQ stuff because he started talking about the bell curve. But I think he always did so not from like the position of a proselytizer, but more like, I'm a big brain boy, and we need to discuss these very important ideas. He's basically a neocon, right? Well, I think in a lot of ways he's kind of neocon-esque. One thing that does distinguish him from neocons is the fact that he legitimately never liked Trump. The neocons fell in line for Trump, but Sam Harris kind of didn't. You know, he's kind of beefed more and more with them over time, and now I think he's pretty actively hated by the far right crowd. So he's a principled neocon. It's more complicated than that. Well, he's one of the more liberal IDW guys. Intellectual dark web. Like the group of guys like Weinstein and shit, you know, the guys who posited themselves as like edgy, dark intellectuals willing to go places where mainstream society won't, willing to discuss ideas, you know. But he's always been one of the more liberal, you know, of the IDW crowds. Yeah, the professional Joe Rogan guest, exactly. Yeah. Didn't the neocons go on to form the Lincoln Project? Well, some did. He's way smarter than the IDW types. Well, I do think he's smarter than a lot of them. He's a hell of a lot smarter than Weinstein, at least. That's for sure. He's also really fucking arrogant. Every time I watched one of his podcast bits, I never got the feeling he was dumb. I just got the feeling that, like, he was very convinced of his own intelligence, so he didn't really look that much into what he was going for. I feel like this comes up a lot, especially with sociology, you know? Because this is the problem with sociology, okay? And I know I'm speaking right now as an aggrieved, like, you know, enthusiast of the field, but the big issue is that it's Dunning-Kruger shit, right? People feel very confident in subjects they have a little bit of knowledge in, because if you have a little bit of knowledge, you don't necessarily know, like, the limits of the discipline. The thing is, most people don't know anything about, like, say, engineering. So I think most people are willing to admit the limits of their knowledge when it comes to, like, well, how is a building built? How is a bridge built? I think most people I think the average person, like, if you were like, hey, yeah, bridge building's complicated, probably a lot of stuff we don't get, they would be like, yeah, yeah. There would be people arrogant enough to try to argue that they could intuit out the entire, like, field of engineering, but I think most people would get that. Sociology, the study of society, the thing that everybody lives in and has opinions on, we don't get that charity. So everybody thinks that they have the necessary amount of, like, sociological information to make the calls they do. Very rarely will people go, actually, you know, this stuff is a lot more complicated. This stuff on racism or sexism or whatever, it's actually a lot more complicated than I give it credit for. This stuff on, like, work incentives or whatever, that's a lot more complicated than I give it credit for. Very rarely do you get that. So you have to listen to people, you know, even smart people, say some really stupid shit. He stand Hillary Clinton too, maybe because of the war hawkishness. There's a couple of reasons. Yes, Dawkins is also a good example of this. Do you agree with Sam Harris's emphasis on ethical consequentialism? No, because Sam Harris believes he solved the is-ought gap. The entire book that he wrote, what was it called? Something Hell, wasn't it? Or what was it called? What was the book? An End to the Moral Landscape. That's right. He thought he just, this is Dunning-Kruger. He thought he just solved an unsolvable philosophical quandary that people have been batting about for millennia. He was, well, how do you, you know, solve objective morality? How do you lead from is to ought, right? And then he's like, well, if you imagine hell, hell is very hot and not good, right? Therefore, since people want to avoid hell, we have to assume that we have to assume hell is objectively bad. It's just some really fucking stupid, seriously? Yeah. No, I'm not. Can chat attest to the validity of what I'm saying? That was basically the point of the book, right? Isn't the whole point of philosophy that there is no objective answers? Well, no, there are plenty of philosophers who believe in objective morality, but not in the way Sam Harris does. I listened to his book. Basically, he had one mushroom trip that informs everything he says and does. Nice.